Mate, you're not gonna believe this, but what just went down between Anthony Albanese and Benjamin Netanyahu is bigger, nastier, and more dangerous than the media's letting on. We're talking about one of the ugliest diplomatic dust-ups Australia's had in decades, and it's not just about politics, it's about who's got the guts to stand up for what's right, and who's still stuck clinging to outdated, toxic alliances that do more harm than good. Now, I know some of you are already clutching your pearls thinking, "Oi, you can't bag out Israel, you'll get cancelled." But now, mate, the truth needs to be said, even if it ruffles a few feathers. And trust me, this one's ruffled a bloody flock. Before we dive into this Albanese-Netanyahu brawl, where Bibi spits the dummy, calls Albo weak, and Susan Ley plays cheerleader for Israel, smash that like button like you're slapping Sky News for another Murdoch meltdown. Subscribe if you're sick of lobbyists running Canberra instead of Aussies. And grab the "Can I vote for a kangaroo" shirt, links in the description. Here's the kicker. Netanyahu's straight up called Albo weak. Weak. He reckons Albanese betrayed Israel and abandoned Australia's Jews. And this wasn't some throwaway line. Either, he doubled down, spat it out like it was gospel truth, hoping Aussies would lap it up like it's 2003, and we're still doing whatever the US or Israel tells us. But here's the reality. What Netanyahu's actually terrified of is that Australia, under Albo, has finally grown a backbone. Recognizing Palestine wasn't just a symbolic move, it was a proper middle finger to decades of one-sided foreign policy that's left countless Palestinians dead, homeless, and forgotten. And mate, that's exactly why Netanyahu's frothing at the mouth. He's lost control of the narrative, and he knows it. The Aussie mainstream media? Don't even get me started. Sky Bloody News went into meltdown, with Shari Markson practically crying into her script about how Albo, Penny Wong, and Tony Burke are some pro-Palestinian trio that's fanning the flames of anti-Semitism. Absolute garbage. You can almost hear Murdoch's editors whispering in her earpiece, "Quick, make it sound like supporting Palestine equals hating Jews. It's the oldest trick in the book, mate." Anyone with half a brain knows criticizing Netanyahu's government isn't the same as hating Jewish people. But nah, they'll never admit that because keeping Australia chained to Israel's war machine makes too many big wigs too much cash. Now here's where it gets juicy and properly controversial. You'd think Australia would be scared after Netanyahu spat the dummy, right? Nope. The Albanese government went ahead and cancelled the visa of Simha Rothman, a far-right Israeli politician, banning him from the country for 3 bloody years. That's unheard of, mate. Normally, we roll out the red carpet for these types, chuck them into synagogues, parliament tours, give them airtime to spew their hard right talking points. But not this time. Rothman, one of Netanyahu's attack dogs, was meant to be here preaching the "Palestinian kids are enemies" line. Can you imagine? Saying kids are enemies? It's sick. And Albo's team wasn't having it. But of course, here come the tears from the opposition. Susan Ley, first female Liberal leader, and already she's proving she'll bend over backwards for foreign interests faster than you can say coal lobby. She reckons the relationship between Australia and Israel is deteriorating, like it's a bad marriage that just needs counselling. Sorry, Sue, but maybe, just maybe, the relationship should deteriorate when one side bombs hospitals and the other finally decides it's not cool to look the other way anymore. Yet Ley's standing there, arms crossed, wagging her finger at Albanese like she's the moral authority. Nah, mate. She's not speaking for Aussies, she's speaking for the same donors and lobby groups that kept Morrison and Dutton on life support all those years. Now here's the spicy bit that'll really get people going. Netanyahu's tantrum isn't just about Australia recognizing Palestine or banning Rothman. It's about losing control. See, when the US sneezes, Israel usually expects everyone else to catch a cold. But what happens when a mid-sized country like Australia, usually a loyal little lapdog, decides to bark back? It shakes the whole system. Other countries start thinking, if Australia can break free, why can't we? And that's the nightmare scenario for Netanyahu and his far-right mates. They don't want a domino effect of countries calling out their war crimes, because then the propaganda bubble bursts. But the part that the media's desperately trying to bury is this. Israel's response wasn't just insults. They revoked visas for Aussie diplomats working in Ramallah. Think about that. Our people, over there trying to keep some peace and represent Australian interests, got booted because Albo dared to treat Palestinians like human beings. That's next level petty, mate. It's basically Netanyahu saying, play by our rules or get stuffed. And instead of calling that out as the authoritarian move it is, you've got half of Canberra pretending it's just diplomatic tension. Give me a break. And this is where Albo actually shows he's got more guts than anyone expected. See, everyone reckoned he'd be this mild-mannered, play-it-safe PM. But he's turned around and basically said, nah, we're not copping your rubbish, BB. That's leadership. And the best part? Ordinary Aussies are backing him. Go down to a rally in Sydney, Melbourne, even bloody Brisbane, and you'll see the streets packed with people waving Palestinian flags, chanting for freedom, demanding our government stop licking boots overseas. It's grassroots, mate. It's real. And it scares the absolute life out of the political elite, because it means Aussies are waking up to the idea that foreign policy isn't just something that happens in faraway lands. It's tied to our values, our communities, our future. Here's the harsh truth, though. The more Albanese pushes for justice in Palestine, the harder Israel's lobbyists here will fight back. Already, you've got commentators trying to paint him as the villain, saying he's fueling anti-Semitism, dividing communities, all that nonsense. They'll weaponize fear, like they always do. But let's be real. The real division comes from pretending one group of people deserves human rights and the other doesn't. The real hate comes from bombing kids, bulldozing homes, and then crying victim when the world finally calls it out. And if supporting Palestine makes you unpopular with Netanyahu, good. Wear it as a bloody badge of honor. Now, let's not forget Donald Trump in all this. Yeah, he's back in the White House, the 47th president of the US, strutting around like it's WWE SmackDown. And you can bet your last dollar he'll back Netanyahu to the hilt. Trump's never met a strongman he didn't love, and Israel's military-industrial complex lines up perfectly with his America First rubbish. But here's the twist. Trump's chaos is actually giving leaders like Albanese more room to move. While the US burns itself out in culture wars and MAGA rallies, smaller countries can start carving out their own paths. Albo saw the opening, and he took it. And honestly, good on him. About bloody time an Aussie PM acted like he was serving Australians instead of Washington and Tel Aviv. But don't think this ends here, mate. Oh no. This is only the start of a diplomatic brawl that's going to get nastier, dirtier, and way more personal. Because when you poke Netanyahu's fragile ego and mess with Israel's grip on Western politics, they don't just sit back. They retaliate. And I can tell you right now, they're already planning their next moves behind closed doors, pressure campaigns, lobby money, smear jobs, you name it. And the million-dollar question is, will Albanese hold the line? Or will the media sharks, the opposition, and the foreign lobbyists wear him down? And let me tell you, the answer to that question is going to change Australia's future forever. Right now, the smell of panic is wafting out of Canberra like a Barbie gone wrong. The press gallery's running in circles, half of them trying to cover for Netanyahu, the other half terrified of losing access to the big donors who've had their fingers in every pie since Howard's days. And the thing that no one wants to admit, not on record anyway, is that Albanese is walking a tightrope. He's got to keep Australia's multicultural heart steady while also staring down one of the loudest, most aggressive foreign lobbies in the country. And trust me, mate, that's no small task. Because here's the raw truth. When you decide to recognize Palestine, you're not just taking a foreign policy position, you're cutting right into the heart of decades of establishment power. There are people here, in the banks, in the universities, in the backrooms of politics, who've built careers out of keeping us in lockstep with Israel, no matter what bombs are dropping on Gaza. The backlash wasn't just expected, it was baked in. Netanyahu calling Albo weak wasn't just a sledge, it was a rallying cry for every one of those power brokers who are now sharpening their knives. And if you reckon they won't use every dirty trick in the book, you've got another thing coming. Now, let's yarn about the opposition for a sec, because Susan Ley has managed to turn herself into the poster child for bending over backwards to please the wrong crowd. First woman to lead the Liberals, history-making moment, right? You'd think she'd be out there showing a bit of backbone, proving the boys' club days are over. But nah, instead of fighting for Aussies, She's out here parroting Netanyahu's talking points like she's auditioning for a gig on Fox News. She reckons Albo's recognition of Palestine is irresponsible, says it's risking national unity, and then throws in that classic conservative line about fueling anti-Semitism. Mate, give it a rest. Aussies aren't buying it. People can see the difference between supporting Palestinians and hating Jews, and the only ones blurring that line are politicians like her who need to scare voters into compliance. And the wild part? The more Lay and the libs try to weaponize fear, the more they end up exposing themselves as out of touch. Everyday Australians, whether they're Muslim, Christian, Jewish, atheist, whatever, are sick of being told what they can and can't feel about global injustice. They're sick of politicians acting like supporting Palestine is some fringe radical position. Go to any major city right now and you'll see rallies 10,000 strong. These aren't professional activists, they're tradies, students, mums with prams, uncles with Bunnings hats, whole communities coming together to say, enough's enough. And that's what scares the establishment most, the people aren't waiting for permission anymore. Now let's not kid ourselves, the game gets darker the higher you climb. Behind the speeches and the press releases, there's a whole machine churning away. Lobbyists ringing phones, think tanks writing op-eds, shadowy donors sliding cash into campaign coffers. And here's the kicker, most of it's designed to make sure Australia stays muzzled when it comes to Israel. You think it's a coincidence Sky News went into overdrive the moment Albo recognized Palestine? You think it's an accident that the Murdoch press is suddenly filled with headlines about Albanese fueling division? Nah, mate, that's orchestration. That's the playbook. It's the same one they ran when Kevin Rudd dared to poke Murdoch, when Julia Gillard copped smear campaigns, when any politician even whispered about rebalancing foreign ties. But Albo's not playing by the old rules. He's not out here chest thumping, but he's doing something even more dangerous to the establishment. He's staying calm. And that calm, mate, is lethal. It shows Australians he's not rattled, that he's acting on principle instead of panicking. And that in turn makes the smear campaigns look desperate. Netanyahu screams weak, but Aussies are seeing a bloke who's finally doing something bold. Susan Lay bangs on about division, but people on the ground are uniting in bigger numbers than ever. The script isn't playing out the way the power brokers wanted, and that's why you can almost smell the fear dripping off them. And here's where it gets truly scandalous. Israel revoking visas for Aussie diplomats in Ramallah wasn't just about punishing Australia. It was a warning shot to every other government watching. Step out of line and we'll make you pay. It's bullying, plain and simple. And instead of folding, Albanese has doubled down. That's unheard of in modern Aussie politics, mate. Normally, we'd grovel, issue a statement about valued partnerships, and sneak back into line. But this time, we didn't. And do you know what that means? It means Australia might have just started a domino effect. Because if one country stands up to Netanyahu, others might follow. Imagine Canada, New Zealand, even bloody France deciding they're sick of being guilt-tripped into silence. That's the nightmare scenario for Israel's far-right government, and it's exactly why they're throwing tantrums right now. Of course, let's not forget Trump's role in this circus. The bloke's back in the Oval Office, strutting around like a rooster on steroids, and you can bet he's already plotting with Netanyahu behind the scenes. Trump loves a good us versus them story, and Palestine fits the bill perfectly. He'll back Israel with every fiber of his orange body, not because he cares, but because it riles up his base and keeps the money flowing. But here's the twist, Trump's chaos is actually creating breathing room for smaller countries. While the US burns itself out on culture wars, other leaders are stepping into the vacuum. Albo saw the gap, and he sprinted through it. That's why Netanyahu's so rattled, because the US can't control the narrative the way it used to, and Australia's showing what happens when you stop living in Washington's shadow. And let's be real, this isn't just about Palestine. It's about what kind of country Australia wants to be in the 21st century. Do we keep being the obedient sidekick, nodding along while our allies commit atrocities? Or do we finally grow up, make independent choices, and stand on the right side of history? Because make no mistake, history will judge us. Just like it judged Howard for Iraq, just like it judged Morrison for climate denial, just like it judged every cowardly leader who chose comfort over conscience. And right now, Albo's writing a new chapter, one where Australia doesn't just talk about values, it actually lives them. But don't think for a second the fight is over. The backlash is going to get nastier. Expect hit pieces about Albo's past, whisper campaigns about corruption, maybe even fake scandals cooked up to weaken him. It's how the game's always played when you cross powerful interests. And the sad truth? Some of it might stick, because in politics, perception matters more than reality. If they can make Aussies doubt Albo, even for a second, they've won half the battle. And that's why this moment matters so bloody much, because if Albo weathers the storm, if he comes out the other side still standing, it'll send a message not just to Netanyahu, but to every bully on the world stage. Australia's not your plaything anymore. And that, mate, is a revolution in the making. And here's where things really start to boil over, mate. Because if you thought the media pile-on and the political grandstanding in Canberra were wild, wait till you hear what's been bubbling underneath the surface. See, when Netanyahu went full scorched earth on Albanese, calling him weak and accusing him of betraying Jews, it wasn't just some angry outburst in the heat of the moment. It was a calculated, surgical strike designed to do one thing: scare Aussies back into silence. He thought he could weaponize guilt, fear, and history all in one go. But what he didn't factor in was that Australians are sick to death of being played for mugs. Because let's be honest, the old tactic of shouting anti-Semitism whenever someone calls out Israel's war crimes? It's worn out, mate. People can see the difference clear as day. You can stand shoulder to shoulder with Jewish Aussies, protect them from hate, and still call out Netanyahu's government for bombing civilians and bulldozing neighborhoods. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive, no matter how hard the Liberals or Sky News try to blur the lines. Albanese understood that. That's why he didn't flinch. He didn't issue some groveling apology. He didn't roll back recognition of Palestine. He just stood firm, and in that moment, he became the first Aussie PM in decades to prove that independence isn't just a word, it's an action. And the ripple effect has been massive. Across universities, you've got students setting up encampments, refusing to pack up until Australia not only recognizes Palestine, but also cuts military and trade ties with Israel. Unions are quietly starting to flex their muscles too, talking about boycotts, even whispers of halting shipments if the bloodshed keeps rolling on. That's not some fringe movement anymore, mate. That's mainstream Australia waking up. Albanese didn't start that fire, but by backing Palestine, he gave it oxygen. And that's exactly why the establishment's freaking out. Now, you want scandalous? Here's one for you. Word on the ground in Canberra is that certain lobby groups have already started tightening the screws on Labor backbenchers. Phone calls, closed-door briefings, promises of campaign cash if they just calm Albo down. Some even reckon a couple of MPs were approached with threats of losing pres-election if they didn't play ball. If true, that's not democracy, that's blackmail. And yet, instead of folding, those backbenchers doubled down in solidarity with Albo. That's unheard of in Aussie politics. Normally, Labor splits at the first whiff of pressure. But not this time. And that's when you know something deep is happening, a cultural shift where politicians realize voters are watching closer than ever, and selling out isn't just unpopular, it's political suicide. And let's not forget Susan Ley in all this, bless her cotton socks. The Liberals thought parachuting her in as leader would be a PR win. Look, we've got a woman leading the party now, we're modern. But instead of proving the party's evolved, she's become a megaphone for Netanyahu's talking points. Every press conference, she's wagging her finger at Albo, accusing him of damaging Australia's reputation. But here's the irony, the only thing damaging our reputation right now is the idea that we should sit back and nod while Israel bombs schools and hospitals. Australians aren't stupid. They can see through the theatre. And the more Ley keeps hammering Albo, the more she reveals whose side she's really on. Spoiler, it's not ours. Meanwhile, Netanyahu's been scrambling to contain the fallout. His government thought revoking Aussie diplomats' visas would send us crawling back. Instead, it just proved to everyone watching that Israel can't handle criticism without lashing out like a spoiled kid. Other countries are now quietly reaching out to Canberra, testing the waters, wondering if they can also take a stand without getting crushed. You know what that is? That's leadership by example. And that's what Netanyahu's scared of, not just losing control of Australia, but losing control of the entire Western alliance. But here's the bit that really flips the table. Albanese has managed to turn this whole saga into a rallying cry at home. He's framed it not as some foreign policy sideshow, but as a test of who we are as a nation. Do we stand for fairness, mateship, justice, or do we let ourselves be bullied into silence? That's powerful stuff. It resonates because Aussies love an underdog, and right now, Palestine is the ultimate underdog. And Albo, by standing with them, has tapped into something raw, something real. It's no longer just politics, it's identity. And make no mistake, this fight is far from over. The smear campaigns are only going to intensify. You'll see headlines about Albanese being reckless. You'll hear whispers about national security risks. You'll even get the odd-cooked conspiracy theory about him being secretly funded by foreign actors. It's all rubbish, but it's predictable rubbish. Because when powerful interests are cornered, they lash out. And the more they lash out, the clearer it becomes that Albo's actually doing something right. This is the fork in the road moment for Australia, mate. We can either go back to the old script, let the Liberals and the lobbyists drag us by the collar back into blind obedience, or we can keep moving forward, carving out our own voice on the world stage. Albanese has already made the choice. The question now is whether Aussies will back him when the pressure hits boiling point. Judging by the protests, the polls, and the vibe on the street, I reckon they will. Because deep down, we all know it's better to be called weak by Netanyahu than to be remembered as a coward who looked away while injustice carried on. So where does this leave us? In uncharted waters. A little nervous, sure, but also more alive, more awake, and more united than we've been in years. This isn't just a political fight anymore. It's a cultural awakening. And it's one we can't afford to lose. See you in the next one, and don't forget to slap that like button like it just sold off your local hospital to pay for another overseas junket. Oi, and if you're really fired up, grab the "Can I vote for a kangaroo" shirt, wear it to the next rate hike meeting, the next protest, or just your local cafe when you're forking out $9 for a flat white while wondering why your tax dollars are fixing someone else's country instead of ours. Stay loud, stay awake, and never stop fighting for the Australia we bloody deserve.